Well, hello everybody. Thank you for watching our virtual spring concert. My name is Ryan Weber. I'm the music director for the Heartland Symphony Orchestra. I'm so happy to have you with us today. I'll admit, as I was preparing this program, I had some mixed feelings. It was roughly 1 year ago that we had to stop rehearsing. We had to cancel our tribute to Beethoven concert. And, things really haven't been the same since for any of us. However, I'm trying to stay positive and hopeful that we can safely resume rehearsals and offer concerts sooner rather than later. And I know I speak for the orchestra, the board of directors, that we cannot wait to do this. We miss you, and we cannot wait to get back to the stage and offer you the same great music that you're used to hearing. So the theme for this concert is featuring youth concerto and composer competition winners. Heartland Symphony typically alternates these competitions, and this is a great opportunity to catch up with past winners and hear some new music that they have graciously shared with me for this concert. As you watch the opening scroll, you heard a performance of the first movement of the Grieg Piano Concerto in A minor by Jared Campbell. Jared won the Youth Concerto competition in spring 2017, and thrilled to feature part of that performance, which was conducted by one of my predecessors, past music director Dr. Alexander Corbett. Next, we're going to hear some music by Ava Filiuchi, who won the junior division of the Youth Concerto competition in spring 2013. You're going to hear her winning performance of the first movement of the Bach Violin Concerto No. 1 in A minor. This piece was originally thought to have been written between 1717 and 1723, but recent research shows it could have been written as late as 1729. The only original source of this music includes the parts that Bach copied from a long-lost score. The movement is in ritornello form, which is when the main section returns in fragments in both the solo violin and the string orchestra. This performance was conducted by Josh Airy, a former music director for the Heartland Symphony. And while we unfortunately did not have video footage of this concert, but we have some great audio, and while listening to the performance, you will see a nice collection of pictures of HSO string musicians, both past and present. A nice tribute to members of our orchestra. Following this performance, I was able to have a brief interview with Ava, caught up with her, talked about her experience working with Heartland Symphony, as well as what she is up to currently. And then you will hear a new recording, the first movement of the Horn Quintet in E-flat by Mozart that Ava has performed recently and recorded recently. So I hope you enjoy the upcoming selections featuring Ava Filiuchi. Well, I'm happy to be joined by Ava Filiuchi from Baxter. Hi, Ava. How are things going?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me. Things are pretty good here, and
Absolutely.
I'm just excited to be participating in a concert, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, as you are well aware, we're all rethinking about what concerts mean during these crazy times. I know we miss uh, our traditional performance venues, but I'm thankful that we're able to do this and give back to our audiences in this
Absolutely.
way. So could you tell us a little bit about your musical background?
Sure. So right now I'm finishing up my undergrad at Boston University in violin performance. So before this, I came from the Brainerd High School Orchestra, the chamber orchestra there. So most of my musical background was in Brainerd. I didn't completely grow up in Brainerd, but most of my schooling was there. And I had a really, really wonderful violin teacher early on. His name was Grant Wilcox. He did a lot for the orchestra program in Brainerd, and he was just very influential to me. And I didn't realize it until later on when I decided to do music. I wasn't always, the most serious person about it. But I think when you have such a formative experience early on, it's hard not to go in that direction.
Right.
So my musical background was like a lot of people who start instruments in public schools. I started a little bit earlier when I was 4 years old, but it was always just private lessons and the school orchestra, just like the public school orchestra in Brainerd, was a wonderful experience for me. I got to play a really large amount of music and
Awesome.
made some wonderful friendships. And then later on in high school, I started driving with my mother down to Minneapolis and St. Paul for some more lessons and some more orchestra, some chamber music, and then I went to school for it. But yeah, that's my background.
Great. Um, and you haven't looked back, as they would say.
Haven't looked back, maybe a little bit, but
Understand. I understand. Uh, can you talk a bit about your experience working with HSO? I know that was before my tenure, but yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about it.
sure, sure. Unfortunately, it's not the freshest thing in my memory. I don't think I was even in high school. I was doing the junior division of it. So it was definitely the first, well, maybe not the first ever competition that I did, but definitely the first competition where I would get to play like a solo concerto with an orchestra, which is a pretty big deal because you're all by
Absolutely.
yourself and you have so many people behind you all playing with you and you can't mess up. Um, but I think at that age, I didn't necessarily know it was a big deal because I didn't see it happening a lot. As you know, there's compared to, more metropolitan areas, there's not that many concerts where I would see concerto performances in Brainerd.
Right.
So I think at that age, I didn't even know that I was supposed to be nervous or afraid. So I have no memory of the pre-concert nerves or anything. I just remember showing up and I think I can't remember what the piece was before, but I remember being like, wow, it's so loud. Because the orchestra at Brainerd was only a chamber orchestra, so there was no winds or brass with it. So I
Right.
remember enjoying the concert before and being backstage and yeah, so a lot of times when you're on stage, you kind of zone out. So I probably did that, and I don't remember it that much. I do remember the audition though, being nervous for that. But looking back, I'm just proud of my middle school self for um, getting to have that experience with such a nice orchestra. And I remember everybody in the orchestra was so supportive and nice to me. So I just have a really wonderful experience looking back.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And talk going back, and you said you don't remember being nervous. In some way, that's liberating.
Yeah.
As we grow up, all musicians fight performance anxiety to some level, and there are definitely times where I wish I could be like you said, just no fears, no qualms at all, because we
Mhm.
feel like we can make our best music, but in that way. So no, that's really awesome. Um, how did your experience soloing with Heartland help you grow as a musician? I know you said it's been a while, but can you remember any lessons that have stuck with it?
Well, I think, and this is the case whenever I do something very hard, harder than I usually do. It happens a few times a year, I would say. Like every time I do that next thing where I'm like, oh, I really didn't think I was going to be able to do it or do it that well or something. It makes you, it helps your brain mentally support the path that you're choosing, because you can say, instead of just believing in yourself because you want to believe in yourself, you can say, well, look, I did that thing and it went pretty well, so why couldn't I do this other thing? And I think that um, at that age, being able to play with a orchestra and having it go pretty well, nothing catastrophic happened. Thank God. I wasn't traumatized, and I think that really helped my musical confidence, and I was able to keep reaching. And not everything went perfectly, but um, sometimes you need something more concrete to help yourself
Right.
keep
Well,
going.
like you say, you know, no performance. Performances are perfect because someone sits behind a CD and edits them, and that's the standard we get used to. But there's a joy in that raw energy and excitement that comes from a live performance,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and
It's been really hard this year comparing that, not having any performances and just doing the recordings. Trying to get the same musicality and energy is it's almost impossible to do in a recording as opposed
yes,
to doing it in a performance.
yeah, no, my brass quintet, we did a summer concert this past summer, and yeah, no, only the camera person in the room, and it's not the same. I can't wait to be back to playing for audiences again, hopefully sooner than later. So,
Hopefully.
uh, can you tell us a little bit? Well, you mentioned a little bit you're studying at Boston University.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how have things been going there? What are your future plans? What have you been up to this year?
Uh, to answer the last question
Sorry, that was a
first,
lot of
not
questions.
much. Um, so practicing a lot by myself, which is good and bad. And I think BU has done a pretty good job. We get tested as undergrads multiple times a week, and I've been able to play with a quartet, no performances. My lessons are on Zoom, but orchestra is in person. Recently, no more winds and brass, so that's been a little bit hard. So just back to string orchestra repertoire, which is very different
Yes.
than full orchestra. But those are mainly the classes I'm doing right now, so I still get to see my friends. Mainly, I see some professors. But yeah, it's been hard. I applied to master's programs last fall, and that was difficult to do after having it's been exactly a year since I've played for my teacher in person. So I've only played over Zoom for my teacher for a
Wow.
year. So it was a little bit nerve wracking to do all of the auditions um, without that in person interaction at all. And of course, all the auditions were not in person, so those were all over Zoom as well, both rounds.
Yeah.
But it's done, and I don't think I'll ever have to go through something like that again.
Fingers crossed, or knock
Yeah,
on wood, whatever you want to do. But yeah, hope
yeah.
yes.
So this fall, I'm anticipating to be. I haven't made my decision yet. I haven't heard back from everywhere, but um, I will be somewhere else that's not Boston, and hopefully be back to regular school at that point, even if it's not completely regular day-to-day life. I'm anticipating that music school will look more normal by this fall.
I think so. I hope so. I teach at Bemidji State, and from last semester to this semester, I can definitely see improvement in what we're able to offer and how many people can safely gather. And so I am hopeful that we will keep making those steps forward and doing what we can to get back to safely resuming concerts, because I know we all miss it.
Absolutely.
Could you introduce the next piece our audiences are about to hear?
Of course, yes. So the piece that we recorded was supposed to be in a real live concert. Imagine that. But then you did go, they made an additional rule that winds and brass couldn't play in groups anymore this semester. So it was a little bit sad. So we got an off-campus space and we recorded Mozart's Horn Quintet in E-flat major, which was written like late 1700s, 1782. There we go. And it's just like a really peppy piece. When I think Mozart and hear this, like that's what I think of when I think of Mozart. Right. So I really love this piece, and I hadn't heard of it really, and I don't think I've ever heard it performed live actually. It's a very unusual instrumentation. We've got, so first of all, horns don't play that much string chamber music, and strings play with wind players on occasion, but comparatively to just playing string chamber, not that much. So, there's only a few of them. So this piece has just one violin, so I'm playing the violin part, and then some friends from BU will be playing the two viola parts, which is a big deal to have one violin and two violas, because usually in a string quartet, there's two violins, one viola, one cello, or you have, if there's two violas, there's also two violins if it's a larger work. So this one's very different because it's one violin, two violas, one cello, and then the horn. So he did this because the more middle range, a little bit lower than the violin, it complements the horn a little bit more. So the texture and everything, I think people will be able to hear the difference than having the texture of a string quartet with the two higher voices and the violins, and then this one, and of course the horn. You can hear that for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you say, it's not a common pairing, and as a trombonist, that's my primary instrument. Just think of all the repertoire for trombone and strings. That gets smaller. Yeah. If you ever get to play some of those pieces someday, I don't know whether to say you're really lucky or to apologize. But but thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today, or talk with me today. And I know the audience is going to enjoy the next piece. I got, from listening to the preview, it sounds great, and I know they're going to like it as well. And I wish you the best, and best of luck with your auditions and your school year, and hope I know we'll be hearing great things in the future. So,
well, thank you for those kind words, and I hope that I will be able to see the HSO at some point live and in person.
Absolutely.
I love that.
All right, so stay tuned, and coming up, we'll have a performance of the first movement of the Mozart Horn Quintet. you, Ava, for sharing the Mozart with us. I wish you the very best with your career, and I hope there will be many chances to hear you perform either virtually or preferably live again in the near future. Next, we're going to catch up with one of the past winners of our composer competition. Kenyon Wilson is the Associate Head of Music at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and he won the composer competition in 2014 with his piece Subterfuge, which you will hear later in today's program. So I'm going to pass the virtual mic to Kenyon as he talks a bit about working with the Heartland Symphony and introduces and performs a new piece of his. So please welcome Kenyon Wilson to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Ryan, and welcome Heartland Symphony Orchestra patrons. It's nice to be a part of your virtual concert today. My name is Kenyon Wilson. I'm the Associate Head of Music here at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with the HSO with a premiere performance of my piece for orchestra titled Subterfuge. It was a lot of fun working with them and winning the composition contest. So let's fast forward 7 years and see where we're going now. I had just finished a new work for orchestra. In fact, a work for, it's a children's program, an entire concert for orchestra and narrator. And I'm real pleased with, look, that's the clarinet as a Saturn V rocket. It was a lot of fun. And that piece was supposed to be premiered in March of 2020, and that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know about other composers, but I really had a difficulty during the pandemic of finding motivation to write new music, simply because we weren't having concerts, therefore no need for new music. But right at the end of 2020, I got word that a friend of mine, a guy I knew back in college, he's a local band director, we went to school together, and he was fighting pancreatic cancer, which is not the nicer of the cancers you can be fighting. And so, friends of mine friends of his were sending, cards and flowers, gift baskets and stuff. And I decided I'll send him get well etudes. And that led to the piece that you're about to hear now. His last name is Luna, and so I called them Lunitudes, etudes, and incorporating his name. And so the title of the movements are Lunitude 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I would send these to him about every 3 weeks. I'd write a new one. They're about a minute and a half long, just kind of a, thinking of you as he was going through the treatments. So the first 4, I followed the arc of traditional sonata form and packaged that together and called that convalescence sketches. So 4 movements. The first movement is very much like an introduction you would expect. The second etude is slow and lyrical, what you would expect to find in the second movement of a sonata. Third movement is a scherzo, and a scherzo is a musical joke, and so it's a real light movement. And then the last movement, I went with a traditional theme and variation form, the type you would see back in the Sousa era days. Just a simple 16-bar idea that you then vary with increasing levels of virtuosity and challenge. And then packaged all these together and called it Convalescent Sketches. The piece has had 1 performance so far, and that's what you're about to watch. This performance was done in February of 2021 here at my university with a closed audience. So the audience are just music majors here at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, so I'm performing just for my students. Distance out in the audience and all of those kinds of protocol. Also, we are renovating our hall. As long as you're not having concerts, it's a good time to renovate your facilities. So behind me, you'll see a rather ugly fire curtain, and behind that is some really hefty construction equipment. But still, we have the opportunity to make music, and anytime we can have live music and have new music, I'm going to take that opportunity. So I hope you enjoyed the premiere performance of Convalescence Sketches. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenyon, for that great performance and sharing your music with us today. I wish you the best with your career and can't wait to hear more of your music again in the future. Before I wrap up today's concert, I'd like to extend a few more thank yous. Once again, thank you to Ava and Kenyon for sharing your time and talents and giving me permission to share the new music with our listeners today. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank HSO musicians, past and present. There's no orchestra without you, and I look forward to the time when we can safely resume rehearsals and concerts together. Thank you to the HSO Board of Directors for all the hard work you do behind the scenes, the planning, and all the support you provide our great organization. I'd like to extend a thank you to our donors, both the individuals and the corporations who have helped sponsor us this year. Even virtual programs cost money to put on, and I thank you for your support. If you would like to donate to the orchestra, either as a new donor or increase your donation, you can do so in a few ways. You can visit our website, heartlandsymphony.com. In the upper right corner, there's a button that says Donate, and you can send a donation electronically through PayPal. If you would like to mail a check, you can email us at heartlandsymphony@gmail.com to ask about sending in a donation, and we will give you instructions as to how to mail in your donation and make sure it gets to us. Finally, I'd like to thank the listeners today. Thank you for tuning into this concert. If this is your first time, welcome. And I encourage you to go back and listen to some of our past virtual concerts. You can find them on our website as well as our YouTube channel. If you search for Heartland Symphony on YouTube, it should be one of the first hits you find. Also on our YouTube channel, you'll hear selections our musicians have recorded from the comfort of their home as a gift to our patrons and listeners to help us get through these crazy months and this difficult time. Well, as promised, we're going to hear a bit of Kenyon Wilson's Subterfuge. This is the world premiere recording. It was conducted by one of my predecessors, former HSO music director, Sergei Oksa. I hope you enjoy the performance you're about to hear, and thank you again for attending today's concert.